Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're back on the update 1.73 dev server and hopefully my FPS issues have solved themselves. I have no idea why they happened, but we'll have to see. Maybe I'll upload those other two videos later on again just to see how they are. So what we're going to be doing is some early looks at some of these planes. Now obviously when the French do come out for the game, I will be doing full reviews on the majority of planes. What I'm thinking of doing is pretty much doing reviews for all of the bombers, then some of the attackers, and then some of the fighters. I think all of the bombers is interesting from my point of view, whereas all of the fighters, well, the majority of them are kind of odd and just are not going to be that fun. So instead we're going to do some early looks at the dev server, and then once the game or the update comes out, then we'll talk about them more in full. So first of all, we're going to have a look at the M.S.410. So the M.S.410 is quite a chunky monkey at rank 2, battle rating 2.0, and it has the Hispano Suiza 12Y31 with about 700 horsepower on it. The reason why it has this nice girth at the bottom of it is basically because of the liquid cooling system. You will find it here, and you will find it here, but basically the reason for this area is for the runoff for the engine to make sure that it doesn't overheat, or at least the liquids in the engine don't overheat. It is formed or armed with 4 7.5mm, 2 in each of the wings, and it also has a center-mounted 20mm Hispano going through the nose. The cockpit itself is very nice, but we'll get into that in a little bit, and it's quite nippy for a 2.0. And there's no secondary armament, unfortunately, but let's take it into a battle and show you what you mean. If you didn't know, you can go into Mission Editor on either the dev server or the normal server and just create a scenario if you feel like it. So we're actually going to drop these numbers because they're a little bit high, just for a test. So let's go 10 and we'll go 12 against the BF-110s. So at 2.0, you don't actually have a ton of competition. If we're talking about Allied versus Axis, your biggest competition is probably the Ki 43, or the Ki 43, sorry, and the Ki 44. For the Germans, the main thing that you have at this tier is pretty much the BF-109 E1. So what you get out of the E1 is a pretty good energy fighter with turning capabilities, and with the MS-410, you get quite a heavy plane, which is okay at turning, and not great at the whole energy fighting thing. Overall look of the plane, as I said, the girth at the bottom definitely puts me off a little bit, but it is very much French looking, if that makes sense. 60 rounds on the 20mm Hispano in the nose is very reminiscent to what you're going to see with pretty much every Hispano that is coming out of the French tree, and the two 7.5s with a ridiculous amount of ammo is something that you're also going to see. What is interesting, or what might change as we go along with this dev server and subsequent dev servers, is a change to the 7.5. So we've already seen different 7.5mm machine guns being put into the game, so we're going to have to see how they work. When, or just before the Italians were released, there was a big update to the Breda Safat machine guns, making them much higher velocity, making them do more damage and everything like that, and hopefully we get something like that for the 7.5s, because right now they don't really do a lot. So we're at 2,000 meters here, climbing at about 5 degrees, and as you can see, we've run out of wet, which is completely fine. It is how it is with these old Hispano Suiza engines. But you can see the radio mast at the bottom here, very reminiscent to the D520, and you can also see the interesting wings as they point upwards at the tips. Definitely a nice looking aircraft. The elevator on it, as you can see, is a bit crazy. Then you've got a wonderful turn on it. I've just realized we're probably in arcade. So I might have to change this. Yeah, I'll just change it. But anyway, that shows you the general physical look of the plane. Obviously, it doesn't really show you the characteristics of the plane because I believe it is set to arcade, unfortunately. So we'll set it to realistic as soon as we can. Yep, there we go. And let's go forward and do basically the same thing. Mission start will be airborne. And then we'll just do 21 versus 22. Yeah. So generally around this BR, the Germans have the early BF-109s in the form of the E1 and also the B series. And they also have the HE-112s. And generally these aircraft aren't that good. But what they are quite good at is gaining altitude, staying at it, diving on you and going after you. So the question is, will the French aircraft be able to do that in a manner which actually works for them? Now, at 3,500 meters, the performance of this machine is actually not too bad. The WEP on it is, of course, limited, which is definitely an unfortunate thing, and you might be able to hear the new engine sounds. If you go to the side of the plane, it sounds very different to if you're looking on the front. And then compare that to the back as well. So they seem to have added some new engine sounds to the side, and also many jets sound very different when they go past you. Same with propeller aircraft, so it's nice to see some more environmental sounds. At the same time, as you can see, we have a beautiful cockpit here in this MS-410. What is incredibly surprising actually is the fact that there is no MS-406. The MS-406 is probably the most prominent fighter that the French had at the time of World War II breaking out, and for some reason it isn't in the game. Instead we get the 410. Now whether that's just because of where the dev server is, and maybe we get some subsequent ones which have that aircraft, but it's just kind of surprising. These guys are diving down. Also, there is no combat flaps, so you are stuck with landing flaps for maneuvers. As you can see, you can actually extend them around 350 for quite a while before they try and break off, but overall they are actually kind of sturdy. If you want to use them as combat flaps, you can use them as combat flaps, even up to 300 kilometers an hour, probably even over. So they are actually incredibly sturdy landing flaps for this machine. My teammates just ran into each other there. Good stuff. I've literally no idea where the enemy is on this map. But yeah, so the main issues this thing is going to have is getting up to altitude in order to face the enemy that it's going to be fighting around that 2-0 mark. If it gets into a 3-0 battle, it's definitely going to struggle quite a lot. But against 2-0 stuff, it should be okay. Against biplanes, this thing will be magical. Just like the HE-100, you'll be able to get above them, you'll be able to build up some energy, you'll be able to dive on them and move back up. But the majority of monoplane aircraft should really be able to do that against biplanes. When it comes to its dive, we've easily hit 600, and what is kind of interesting about the D520 is it kind of hits 700 and then it just stops. Like, it can't gain any more speed, and as you can see with this MS-410, it's kind of the same deal. Like, it's actually really hard to gain speed past the 700 kilometers an hour mark, and that is IAS and also normal kilometers an hour, depending on what you use. So around 730 it starts to redline, so that's not too bad at 2.0, but it's going to be incredibly hard in a dive to break your wings in this thing, so take that as you will. When it comes to the stall speed, as you can see, we're looking at about 40 kilometers an hour straight. It has a wonderful little dip on it. So hammerheads in this machine may actually work out kind of in your favor, but this actually means that you're going to have more energy than your opponents, and that is quite hard to do in this machine. When it comes to overall roll rate, I mean, it's not great if you're not using the elevator, but if you're using the elevator, I mean, it's serviceable, it's good enough. And yeah, the guns have the issue where there's only 60 rounds of the Hispano, so if you've flown the D520, you're going to be very used to that. If you haven't flown the D520, then you're going to have to get used to it with the new French aircraft, because the majority of them per cannon have about 60 to 120 rounds. So there's that. Now you're out. Now you just have 7.5mm, 2 in each of the wings, in order to be able to go after people. But yeah, you have a wonderful cockpit. You can also open it if you want. It has this nice little lever at the bottom showing that, you know, the pilot would hand crank it to close the thing. And base speed, this is obviously without any of the upgrades, is around about 350 in a straight line. So you're not really going to be getting away from anything, but you may be able to competitively fight a lot of aircraft which are around your BR, as long as you're engaging them with landing flaps. This does generally mean that energy is going to be a big deal in this thing, and with the huge girth in the center of it, it's going to lose quite a lot just by going in a straight line. So it's going to be interesting to see how this matches up, especially against a lot of the lighter fighters that are around this BR. The HE-100, the Ki-44, even something like the early Spitfires, which it probably won't face, but if it does, then it may have an issue. The perfect, or the best matchmaking for this thing would actually, if it faced Americans, in my opinion, the heavier fighters, where it can outturn them, it can out-energy fight them, because it will be able to lose energy as well as them, but also have the opportunity to not use its landing flaps and just outturn them as it goes. So it really, maybe its best matchups it probably won't ever face. So therefore you're going to have to deal with the lighter fighters of the BF-109 and the HE-100, and I'm not exactly sure how this thing stacks up at 2-0 against them. In my first impressions is that it's going to be absolutely terrible against those aircraft. It has a good enough turn. Like, it loses quite a lot of speed on the turn, so you're going to have to use it to energy trap your enemies as you fight them. It's a nice little Matilda there. When it comes to landing this machine is... It might actually be a really good trainer for a person who is trying to learn how to land in sim, because as you can see, it's one of the easiest planes to land. It has a really low speed that it can stay up in the air at. The landing flaps, as I said, up to 300, 350, and the gear itself are nice enough for it to be able to land quite smoothly. So therefore, something like this may be great for a person who just wants to learn how to land in simulator. Maybe it's a good trainer aircraft in that regard, and also in a pseudo dogfight role. But in actual matchmaking, I'm not exactly sure that it will be great. It will be one of those middling planes that you'll see as people research it, but after that, it's not going to be one that sticks around. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.